the truth is actually children are smarter than us, because they
Right.
tap into their bodies, they tap into their intuition, they might not have the brain capacity or the intellect. So, and when I say this, right, a child is not necessarily going to know not to put their hand on a hot burner.
Hmm.
So it's not the intellect. It's not the intellect. We get to help build that. We get to help them build that. But
Yeah.
when it comes to regulating themselves, actually, children are wonderful at that.
We're excited to have you. So everybody, welcome back to Parenting on Purpose. I have such a gift for you guys today. I have Miss Nina Wilson, a licensed therapist specializing in helping kids regulate their emotions and also abundance. So this is such a special, near and dear topic to my own heart as I'm raising my children. And I'm just really excited to spend some time with you today.
So exciting. I actually really love talking about this stuff. So I like talking about all of my work, but kiddos kind of hold like a special near and dear place in my heart. So I'm really excited to be here.
I've heard over years that the parenting is the highest calling. Motherhood, fatherhood is the highest calling. And then you don't really understand that until you're like in the throes of it, and you really lose yourself in the throes of parenthood. And now you have people looking at you as an example, and you basically have to figure that out for yourself, and then be a role model to somebody else. And it really is a spiritual path. At least I find it to be, where you have to be so cognizant of yourself in order for you to grow, so your children have the proper nourishment energetically and physically, so that they can thrive and grow. So the whole purpose of us being here is to give our parents the stuff they don't teach you in school, to help you with those tools so that you can really show up, be present as a parent, and really enjoy that journey, because it's such an unfoldment. So when I find beautiful souls like you who have specific tools for those toolkits, that's why I had to reach out to you and bring you on. So why don't you start by telling us where you're at in the world, and then a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll just get into it and play a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm currently in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I kind of wanderlust a little bit, so who knows where I will be a year from now, but right now, Santa Fe is absolutely gorgeous. It has been completely magical for me, and so I just adore it. I absolutely adore it. I'm really excited to be here.
It's a beautiful place. Very, very cool. Like sky connection. It's awesome.
It's gorgeous. I mean, every single day is gorgeous. It's been snowing lately. Gorgeous. Wow. The sky is the clearest I've ever seen. Yeah, it's amazing. A little bit about my background, though. I decided when I was very young that I wanted to be a therapist. And when I was in undergraduate college, I actually had a dual major in therapy, but also family studies, because family units were so, at the time, very interesting to me. I was like, I love human behavior, but how these humans interact together and how it's different with families than it is like with friends or whatever else was just really fascinating. And at the time, honestly, I was doing some of my own healing around my own family stuff. So it really kind of made sense for sure. Then, as I was telling you earlier, when you get your bachelor's in counseling or therapy or psychology, you really can't do anything with that. You can't become a therapist until you get your master's. So you just social work, which is pretty much all families, children, So I did, work with a women's shelter, saw a lot of children there, and single women trying to leave domestically violent situations with their children and those dynamics. I worked there for 10 years. Then I worked in the social welfare system for several years. And then I worked in a level 3 school. Level 3 schools, for those that don't understand, are schools where when your child gets kicked out of daycare or school because of their bad behavior, they still have to go to school. So level 3 schools are set up, they're actually set up to be more therapeutic. So we actually help with the behaviors, and there was a whole therapy side, and then there's the school side, and it's very
Wow.
intertwined and intermingled. So all day long, we're helping these kiddos through school, but we're also helping them, all of the ones in our school had a trauma diagnosis.
What age are they? And are they different? Like different level 3 schools do different ages, or like what was the
Yeah,
age group that you were focusing on?
it really depends on the school, and it also depends
Got it.
on the state and the district and all of that stuff too. The
Got it.
ones, I mean, literally we had, man, 18 months, I think, was the youngest that we had in our level 3
Oh
school.
my
So if you
gosh.
can imagine an 18-month-old getting kicked out of daycare because of their bad behavior, like,
Wow.
and then it went all the way up to, we were able to have all the way up to, I think, 16. I don't know that we ever had anybody that old though. 15 though, for sure. Um,
Okay. Okay.
I
So that's a
don't really
range.
know
Like
what
in itself,
happens
that's a lot.
at 17, right? Like,
Okay.
I don't know why that age was left out. Because in Nebraska, well, in Nebraska you have to be 19 to be an adult.
Got it.
So, and this
Okay.
was in Nebraska. So, yeah, very
Okay, so cool. So
interesting.
thank you for that clarification. So that gave you quite a lens between the women's shelter, the level 3 school, the social work. So with your good thing you had a proclivity toward families because life definitely geared you that way. I think it saw in you a skill set and said, "All right, sister, here you go."
Yeah, for sure.
And so then it birthed your therapy business and practice, and that's awesome. So if you don't mind, give us a little bit about like what you've learned in that time, especially pertaining to parents. Like, what are some of the things that you saw, and as you culminate those experiences, what are some of like the recurring themes that led you to write the course that you wrote in the books?
Yeah. So another thing that all of those populations had in common was trauma. So I'm a licensed therapist. I'm licensed in 3 states. My expertise is trauma, suicidal ideation, which is actually really high among kiddos, and psychedelic integration. So those are the things, like, those are my expertise. When I was living in Nebraska and I was working with this level 3 school, I also had my private practice. And one of the things that I really realized about trauma is that you can't talk your way out of trauma, and you definitely can't medicate your way out of trauma. The other part of that is that my office was right across the street from a military base. So you can also throw in that population of parents and children, and it is a completely different culture than anything
Yes.
else. So, and then obviously its own types of trauma, right?
Well, to me, you have military and psychedelics. You pretty much can't get any more opposite of that. So that's a fun little like Easter egg. The universe is like, here, figure that out.
I will
That's
tell you that it's so interesting because a lot of the populations that I work with or have worked with seem very like so far out there, but we're all human. It's all the same. Like, the trauma the traumatic experience might be different. You might, because we are each individuals, it might express itself a little different, but it's all the same because we're all
yeah,
human. So,
exactly. Yeah. We're all having
but
a human
with,
experience playing it out in different ways. I love that. Love that.
yes, yes. So with my experience in trauma and my own personal experience with trauma, I realized that those things were not, you can't medicate it, you can't talk your way out of it. And so it needed to
Mm-hmm.
be a very holistic situation or integrative situation. So I developed a holistic protocol to the treatment of trauma. And then I got trained in a lot of things outside of just therapy. I do energy work, yoga, breathwork, meditation, functional medicine for mental health, obviously plant medicine, those things. So there's
Yeah,
a
which are all
lot.
tools. These are all
Yes,
tools.
these are all
Yeah.
tools. These are all things that go into that. But then being able to, it's really interesting the difference between children and adults.
Okay.
Adults already have preconceived notions about who we are as a
Mm-hmm.
person. We already have preconceived notions about how things should go, and we already have preconceived notions about how we should do things. But
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind that those preconceived notions all come from the lens of our parents
I
and
was
their
literally thinking that as you said
limited
it.
their limited worldview and their limited box that their parents gave them.
Yeah.
So in order to really move through helping a child, it's not just the child, it's the parents. And maybe it's the parents and whatever else.
Yeah.
And when I say parents,
Yeah.
I'm talking any type of parent, whether it's a natural parent, whether it's a step parent, whether it's a foster parent, whether it's a grandparent,
The guardian.
Yes,
the
any of the
keeper
things.
of this,
Any
of this
adult
soul.
in a child's life. That's where I'm just going to go with that. So one of the things that I've really noticed working with children, and they are resilient, they are open, when you are in childhood, that's where you're deciding these things. So if you put them in a box, they're going to try to stay in that box. But if you, as an adult, are open, not only to different than what maybe you have that preconceived notion of. So doing your own inner work is going to be like the number one way to help your children, but also being open to learning from your children. There's a lot of times where parents would come in and either they were not in a space to do their own work and they just wanted me to fix their children. And I'm a very blunt therapist. So I'm like, look,
good. That's your stuff.
You're going to have to work on yourself and your environment, or your child is never going to change no matter what I do with them in therapy. Right? So the other part of that, though, is, and you and I were kind of talking about that before we started recording, is that children are phenomenal beings. The wisdom, insane. But we think because we're older, we have more experience, we have education, that we are smarter than our children. But the truth is actually children are smarter than us because they tap into their bodies, they tap into their intuition, they might not have the brain capacity or the intellect. So, and when I say this, right, a child is not necessarily going to know not to put their hand on a hot burner. Mm-hmm. So it's not the intellect. It's not the intellect. We get to help build that. We get to help them build that. But when it comes to regulating themselves, actually children are wonderful at that. It's when we start to put them in those boxes and you start to shut down their natural regulation, or you don't know how to work with their natural regulation, that's when you start seeing a lot of the behaviors. Or I will also say that a lot of the medications that some of the children are on, but that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Like there's so much to unpack here.
The other thing is that a lot of the bad behavior that we deem bad behavior is actually kids just trying to regulate themselves. And we're saying that this is bad, this is wrong, this is negative because A, we don't know, we don't understand it. Two, we don't want to deal with loud noises. We don't want to deal with flailing bodies. We don't want to we feel like kids should, and adults, we feel like kids and adults should all just be calm and silent all the time. And that is not, we're animals. This is not how we were created. Wow. So that's, I think, the other part. All they're doing is responding to their environment. They're responding to stimulus and they're responding to energetic buildup in their bodies. That's all it is. And so once you learn what that looks like and you learn how, as a parent, once you as a parent learn what that looks like and how to manage that, then I'll tell you that they kind of regulate themselves. But this is outside of the box for some parents, and I'm very aware of that. And that's okay, because you know what? You only know what your parents knew, and they only knew what their parents knew, and they only knew. So if you didn't have, if we're not expanding down the line here, then, this might make you very, very uncomfortable, like what I'm talking about or how I'm saying this. But it works.
But I like that, because triggering to me, and this past few years has been all about triggering and polarization in the media, but it makes you think. And I think that's the whole point of this is next level. It's like the grocery shopping experience. It might not be for you today. Maybe it is, but it's just the exposure. from what I glean from what you're saying is a lot of people have to go through a very traumatic experience to start learning these lessons. If we can help that learning curve and just expose someone to the idea, as triggering or not as that is, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
To me, that's a beautiful way to expose them. So from your experience then, what are some of the tools? You said when parents learn how to understand and manage that regulation of energy, then, it's better, it's easier for them to allow their children to be who they are. What are some of those ways that kids regulate that energy, move that energy? And what are some of the tools that you help your parents with that?
Right. So first and foremost is really working on emotional intelligence. Now, I'm going to tell you, I work with adults and a lot of them. I have a very full practice. I work with a lot of adults. I cannot even tell you how many adults come into therapy and they are like struggling to manage their emotions, which I'm going to say is another topic about being able to manage your emotions. They're struggling to regulate themselves. They're struggling to work with their emotions. And it's because they only know like 5 of them. They only know anger and sadness and happiness and overwhelm and maybe like 1 or 2 others. So the first thing to do is to first understand emotions yourself. There are these amazing emotion playing cards that you can get on Amazon. I love them. I love them in my office, and I use them more with adults than I do with kids. Right? And it has the expression on their face, and then we get to learn not only that there are different emotions, but when I look at you and I say overwhelm, tap into your body and see what your body feels like. Okay.
I feel disconnected.
Now, when I say anger, tap into your body, see what your body feels like.
Okay. You lost me again? And that, boys and girls, is where we lost the incredible soul sister, Nina. She's off in the desert somewhere having an amazing time. I have no idea what happened because during the podcast, I heard her perfectly for the next 40 minutes, and it was incredible. So this life requires flexibility. I will definitely have her back on the show again because she was awesome. But I still am going to post this because I think her message is incredible, and I learned a ton. What she did share over the next 40 minutes, I definitely won't do as much justice, but it was basically with her adult clients. She starts by helping them really understand their emotions and how they feel in their body. And a lot of times we'll feel one emotion and we label it something else. So she goes through with different tools and cards and what people usually break down or, push down into 1 or 2 emotions. She helps them really understand and feel the difference between those. Once they can see them in themselves, it's really easily applicable in their families and for their children. So that's one of the things that she does that I just loved. Another incredible golden nugget that came from this podcast was letting your kids self-regulate their emotions, whether that's like crying or screaming or lashing out, whatever that looks like, obviously helping them be in a safe place to do that and allowing it, and then also modeling that behavior. Obviously, I'm not saying get on, aisle 7 of the floor, with the Wheaties and just start kicking it in the grocery store. But if you really are feeling emotionally charged, like showing your children healthy ways to discharge those emotions, whether that's crying, whether that's, she's a big proponent of shaking. I know in a lot of African tribes, they all huddle together and they shake as a common practice just to help move and like regulate the energy. That's what she gives as an example. Or even just being in the car with them and screaming with them at the top of their lungs and doing it with the intention of like getting out all the energy that's bothering you and then moving on and now setting positive intentions for the next interaction in space. So it was a beautiful podcast. She's an incredible soul, so knowledgeable for being so young. I can just feel the years and like decades of experience. And she just has such a great heart about her. So Nina, we love you, girl. This was awesome. Despite the technical glitches, your message is absolutely incredible and we'll absolutely share it. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast. And for our parents, thank you for being here. As always, stay beautiful and stay inspired. We'll see you guys next time.